Hey, what's going on, YouTube? We are here today with a really exciting topic, I think, one that I've been excited to talk about for a couple of weeks. And I'm joined for our third discussion video. Maybe actually this is actually the fourth discussion video. That's pretty cool. With Darrin. You might have seen Darrin on some other videos, including a poll video, as well as maybe some videos with Sinzar, which has been pretty cool to listen to. And we got an idea for a video. This was actually recommended to us by another creator streamer, Flip Method. And I wanted to invite Darrin and I to talk about this topic. So I'm gonna go ahead and let Darrin say hello and introduce himself and do all that. And then we'll get into what this is really all about.
What's going on, guys? It's good to be here. Like Gert said, I've been around for a long time. I've been a moderator on the global Facebook page since about mid-year 2, and have just kind of recently been more outspoken about the things that I've seen and how the game has changed over the years, and of course how I feel about it, hence the recent video for the anniversary with Sinzar. If in it, please feel free and let me know how much I clearly love Sylvie way too much.
There's no such thing as loving Sylvie too much, and absolutely, yeah, that's the main place where I know Darrin from is, moderating over in the Facebook group, and so I'm glad to get two of us together to talk about some stuff and share some insights from like a specific corner of the interwebs, which is the Facebook group for FFBE. So welcome, and I'm glad to have you. So
Good to be here.
yeah, this is gonna be great. So to just kind of give some perspective, we're just coming hot off of the anniversary, of the game, the 6th anniversary of the game. We're into like our first couple of events post anniversary, which is maybe even still kind of part of the anniversary. And Flip gave us an idea. How did we get here? How did we get from, our very, very first events in the game, 6 years ago, to where we've now got like basically three separate game modes of like regular content to play with. And what was it that brought us from there to here, and what does that journey look like? And so I'm going to pop some kind of general topics up right here, that's going to kind of guide our discussion. But Darrin and I are just going to look back over, a little bit over types of events that we've seen, and how that has gotten us to where we are today. So you mentioned that you'd been moderating in the Facebook group since year 2. When did you start playing?
So I started kind of putzing about pretty much from launch. I didn't really do a ton. I vaguely remember the first 11 pull that I really paid attention to. Was probably my first big pull in the game as a whole, and I remember getting Tillith and from the Brave Frontier collab way back when.
Yeah.
And I looked at her for a long time. Like, I didn't know anything about the game. The way I play RPGs is I always just focus on damage and absolutely nothing else. And when the only content I really felt guided towards at the time, because there's really no guidance in the game, at least in year 2 or year 1, I suppose, was story mode.
Mm-hmm.
And when you could really just face roll story mode by just auto attacking and calling it a day, I didn't feel too much of a need for Tillith. And then I ended up getting like original Tidus and original Noctis after they kind of figured out what was going on with him. Veritas Light was a pretty early pull for me in the time I paid attention to. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden I hit the wall that was the original Soul fight from back in season 1. Ooh. And for the people watching who don't know anything about that fight, because it has very much been changed now than what it was then, if for no other reason than power creep, but you couldn't hurt him. And he was capable of nuking you very quickly. And all of a sudden I dig this Tillith out of nowhere, who for a 4-star base unit just has a max heal.
Yeah.
Flat. That was absolute god tier. I thought she was useless rather, because she had no damaging skills, which meant she was nothing to me. And here comes this, oh yeah, use one skill and everyone's full again. It's like, oh, I see. And so then I fell down the rabbit hole pretty deep, but it wasn't really until the probably CG protagonist. So starting with that CG last, well, Pyroglacial, that I really, really went full in to keep up with content, grind everything, finish everything, pull for everyone I felt like pulling. So really it started with those. But I've been putzing around almost since the beginning.
Okay, cool. Yes, I actually I was around in the beginning too. I was there. Gandalf. I was there on the first day. I did pre-register, but I wasn't in any of the beta testing, so I don't have negative days on my account like some folks do. But I remember that too. I also had a Tillith, and I remember just thinking like, gosh, this unit is so weird. She can't equip anything. She can barely do anything that I need her to do. Why do I care? And then she got her her like ability update when they did the Brave Frontier collab like a rerun, and it was like, oh. Now this matters.
Right.
It was super cool. In fact, I remember the first Brave Frontier, I couldn't beat the Maxwell. I couldn't beat the final boss of that. That was actually one of the only events I couldn't complete back in the day. And then the Maxwell came back around the second time, and it was just like, boom, you're done. Power creep had totally impacted the game at that point. So
and we'll come back to power creep, I'm sure. It's a very prevalent thing that it's more sneaky than it seems, even when it seems super obvious. There's plenty to talk about there.
For sure. So, like, the very first event, I went back and I looked at the event history page on the wiki. The very first event that we ever had was actually, like, in the first month of the game, and it was called Lands of Plenty, and it was an exploration event where you could farm and farm and farm and farm and farm to make one shining splendor sword that would blind the enemy, like, sometimes. And it was just like, it was like putting all this work and all this effort into making this one weapon, or like this one gravity rod. You could make multiple gravity rods, but the amount of resources you had to pull to get the best rod in the game at that time was like, you were farming all day, every day to get it during that time. Or like the 1 HP 15% mod or ability that you could craft in that event. Like, you think about like events like that. And then, like, this week, we get an event that's like, here's a free two-handed 195 attack katana with true double hand percentage on it. And it's just like, wow. how have we gotten here? How have the rewards changed that much?
And it's interesting still to really put into perspective, because I remember the original Final Fantasy X event with Tidus, Riku, and I guess it was Waka back then.
It was Waka, yeah.
And the old Razzmatazz. And I remember people putting that on units in Arena, and all of a sudden my entire party was petrified. And I was absolutely livid. But not for the logical reason, but because I sold it and I had no idea what to even make of something like that. Selling things was a terrible habit that I had because I refused to upgrade inventory slots. So I've sold a lot of very important limited time equipment, cough, reflect ring. We're not going to talk about it, except we will.
We will, probably.
But yeah, these rewards are absolutely insane. I mean, the fact that they're willing to give you a banner now, which admittedly is reasonably exorbitant, but no more exorbitant than trying to pull for a unit before pity existed. Where now you get a 50% attack, 100% true double hand, 100% LB damage materia just because you wanted a unit is astounding to me.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted Sylvie, right? But I pulled for that weapon, or that ability. Like, that ability like rounded out Kaito. It rounded out the Esther that I eventually got while we were pulling. Like, that ability, that we just get as a consolation prize, is like, whoa, what is this?
And I still see where a lot of people are concerned whether they'll keep that idea around as a way of enticing players to pull on banners they don't actually care about, for units they don't really care for. It's like when Leave It To Me came out on Tulian's banner. It's awful, absolutely awful, terrible, horrible unit with a pretty good card, but Leave It To Me made people all of a sudden have this Toolian that no one cares about.
I'm one of them.
And so I do worry about where that'll come at the end of the day, but for now, putting that type of materia on a banner with units that people really, really want, that's probably the second best banner that they've ever come out with, which again, I will die on the hill that the original Sylvie and Esther banner is the best banner that's ever happened.
For sure. With all the drama that surrounds it, it was still, just a game-changing banner. Speaking of banners, so like, I remember really closely, like, having to decide, like, do I want to spend my tickets in Lapis on this event? How much King Mog bonus do I want to collect? Do I want to throw tickets in the hope that I could get the 4-star unit so that I could have a slightly higher % chance of rate of gain for the resources, so I don't have to farm quite so much. And like back then, it was like back to back. Like if you wanted to play every event, you had to pull at least a little bit on every banner, like to have bonus units, because it wasn't like they are now where you could have like the last 3 events giving you something of a bonus. Like you had to pull every event to get bonus, which was crazy, but we did it.
We did, and that was back when you could settle for 4 stars too. I mean, I don't know why this event sticks out in my head, but the Bosch Balthier King Mog event,
yes,
from back in 5-star, I had enough Lapis to pull, I think once, and I pulled Bosch, which I was upset at the time. I wanted Balthier, but that's just because I liked the character better from 12. And Balthier, or Bosch rather, absolutely carried me through the EX stages of, or the EX level of that fight, which at the time was the least efficient way of grinding. But I remember I would agonize over how much energy I was spending because I wasn't quite strong enough at that point to consistently grind the last stages. So I was pumping energy into inefficient stages to try to get as much as I could. I couldn't tell you what that event gave us at this point. I suppose I could look it up.
Yeah.
It's probably not relevant now. But the grind was so incredible.
And it wasn't straightforward. It wasn't just, oh, this level has the highest energy cost, it's the most efficient. Frequently it was the one just below it, because of like that one had an increased chance of bonus enemy drops. But it still was like, but what if I don't have time to run this event 6 extra times, because it's the less efficient, quote unquote, even though it was more efficient. Like, and I just remember putting a lot of effort into trying to figure out the math on it because it didn't display it on the screen. And like, it was just, events were nutty, and you had to pull on them on every banner to do something. If it was a King Mog, if it was, and we'll get, I think we're getting to story units here in just a moment, but like, if it was the exploration, you didn't really need to worry about it, because we did have events that were solely exploration events for a long time. You really had to do that for King Mogs because we didn't have raids. So pretty much at least once, twice a month, you had to pull on those banners if you wanted bonus units. In fact, I remember a lot. I used to watch, in the early days, I used to watch a ton of guideforgamers.com. And the commentary was always, should I pull, should I summon? And it was like, well, if you want bonus units, you better summon, because that was what we needed to do.
Right.
So.
Yeah. In a way, you still have to, but I appreciate that they've at least made it so that if you pull, the grind is still not as bad because they're letting old units matter for bonus. You'll just finish the event slightly faster, but if you have enough energy pots, you can get to the 80k event point threshold in a day or two at this point. But back then, man, it was a slog at best.
I had a spreadsheet.
Oh, jeez.
I had a spreadsheet because I'm that nerdy that was like, okay, if I have this many units, and I had to calculate the bonus manually because that was what you had to do, and I knew I had this much energy. It was like, how many hours can I wait for my bar to decrease to 0, and then how long do I have to wait for it to refill, and then how many runs is it going to take me to earn the currency for the 5% Trustmaster Moogle that you can buy in the event, and it was just like, so much time and effort into just figuring out how to farm the game. And now it's just like more than once an event we see posts in Facebook where it was like, well, that was a short event on day 1.
Right.
So,
Which is, it's good and bad. It'd be good if there was still things to do, and for people first coming into the game, I mean, I'm seeing the benefit of being involved with the Facebook group is we get to see these people who are probably just rolling their account yesterday or right when the anniversary started, and they're showing up with these 7,000 attack EX2 Stormseeker Esters at a rank 70. Do you remember your first unit that broke 700 in a stat? I do.
And it was Explorer Eileen.
Oh, she's such a goddess.
Yes.
Mine was Blossom Sage Sakura.
Okay.
Is what I will say, what I tell people was the first unit that made my account relevant. It was the first time people started adding me as a friend. I think I had like 761 magic. And I felt so good because you could go and you could beat the Bloody Moon and nothing stopped you. And then here we are with these day 2 players with 1,000% of the damage stat that we had at that time in our playing careers, and it's so interesting to watch.
And those are some funny posts too. The ones where it's like they'll post like 7 screenshots of all the units they just got on their first day, and it's like, what do I do with all this? And it's like, oh my gosh, you have no idea what it was like to have 3-star Barts be your best unit in the entire game.
Oh god. And then of course 8 out of 10 comments are reroll.
Oh, I know. Please don't reroll. If anyone watches this takes one piece of advice, please do not reroll. Just play the game. Get your lapis and play the game.
Because let's be honest, you might spend 2 or 3 days re-rolling to get these units people are telling you to pull. I promise in a couple weeks, it won't matter that you have them at all.
The free units that you get from doing the panel quests will clear the game. Yeah.
You will catch up to story immediately, which gets you a lot of lapis if you pull on nothing.
Which is a thing, right? So the game has obviously become more difficult over time. What would you say was one of the hardest events you faced early on in the game that you just remember being like notoriously dumb, that you just like couldn't beat it, or you just bashed your head against the wall over and over again trying to beat it?
So this was long before I was really pulling. Like I said, it was the Final Fantasy 14 Ifrit raid.
That was I believe that was the first
awful.
raid.
I think you're right. I remember banging my head up against the wall with that forever and ever, and then I was just like, you know what? Clearly this is not for me right now.
Sorry, no, that was not the first. The first raid was the Frosty Offensive. That was a Christmas event. But
yeah,
I think that was the first
event.
That was the first raid. Event. That was the first raid that was series themed, was the Ifrit one. Yeah, for sure.
But as far as relevant, more modern events, it was oh gosh. For the life of me, I can't remember her name. The one who has the crazy MP drain preemptive.
Hasiko?
That's what I'm stuck on too. Yeah, I think that was the name.
I think it was Hasiko.
That was awful.
Yeah.
But I loved Foka. It was the only healer who ever dropped for me, so it was easier than it could have been. It was still awful.
So on Hasiko, I was running Ayaka still, and Ayaka's answer to everything was just use your limit burst. It's not a big deal. Just use your limit burst. And of course, their answer to that was no limit burst was a mission. So I was like, no, I can't use my limit burst.
Of course.
Gosh.
It was nice back in the day when the other answer for everything was double cast Kiraja and re-raise.
Good stuff. So my most difficult event that I remember vividly, just pounding the event, trying to get it done, was the Titan event.
Oh yeah.
Where I think that's 11, right? Or is that also 14? I can't remember if it was 14 or 11. I think it's 14.
I can't either.
But it was just after Orlando came out, and I didn't have an Orlando, and it was just before the very first 4-star Warrior of Light came out. And of course, this boss was like slamming you constantly with AoE physical attacks. And I remember people were like using like the story unit Sakura because she had the very first mitigation skill that you could get in the game.
Oh, that's right.
And like, and you're just trying to make it work. And I had like a handful of friends that were set with Orlando as their goal, with Golem as their friend unit, because you could only have one friend unit at the time. And like, I beat it like with half an hour left on the last day. And it was just like, I was so amped that I beat the event, because like, you know, you got a really good Spirit 50 accessory, you know, just for doing it. Right. And that's a type of thing. Like, we don't have events like that anymore, where like the event is this one fight. I mean, we get like the EX battles and Chronicle battles and stuff like that, but like the whole event was, here is this fight against Titan, you know.
Right. And I mean, that's in a way, that's a part of where we are now. I mean, if that's not at least a similar themed idea to Clash of Wills, then not much is. The whole premise of Clash of Wills is you're fighting the same thing over and over, that you have control over what the difficulty becomes. Realistically, if they were to try to give us an event like that now, I mean, short of just rehashing Telphosaurus, which again is probably still to this day my favorite event, for reasons that we can get into in a minute, but without rehashing that, if they were to just give us a one fight trial, people would be unhappy. You'd see these top tier players posting YouTube content about a fully wailed out Esther and Wylk and Sylvie showing up, and unless this person or this unit that we were fighting was immune to LB damage, it's not gonna matter. I mean, I don't think that kind of format is truly sustainable outside of the Clash of Wills format at this point. Whereas before, you were limited to 6-star units who probably had 6 skills, of which you might use 2. The strongest weapon you had still could have potentially been original Cecil's Excalibur.
Yes.
If you're lucky, or maybe you pulled on oh my goodness, what was his name? The Lightbringer. Who had that?
Lightbringer was
that was another collab unit. It's completely gone from my head because I never pulled him.
That wasn't Rayjack, was it?
It was.
Okay, Rayjack.
It was Rayjack.
Okay.
Maybe you had Lightbringer so you could trade with whoever was using Excalibur. But like, we don't have that anymore, and we can't possibly ever get back there. True Double Hand probably eliminated that completely, but even now, there's just, you can't create something that is so universally perceived as difficult like we could then.
And that was a thing about events. Like, every event that came out, you know, would give us some random weapon or some random item that actually did change the game. So like, I remember, you know, like you said, everyone was running around with Excaliburs. Maybe you had, maybe you were like super whaley and you had 2 Excaliburs on your Orlando, you know. But then like an event would come out where it was like, oh, here's a new katana that just comes out, you know, and you can use, and this is 5 attack higher. And then the next event was like, oh, well, here's a long sword that's like 2 attack higher than that and happens to be water elemental, or like would let you, heaven forbid, dual wield for free. And it was just like, you know, every event would come out that would like just like push the game just a little bit further. There were certainly some dud items too, but like, you know,
like Lightbringer.
But, you know, a lot of stuff was really, really cool, including 4-star units. You know, 4-star units with their TMRs were super, super neat.
Absolutely. Look at Chizuru.
Chizuru, for sure. Katana Mastery, right?
Oh, she had Sakura. Nope, that wasn't her. That was the 3-star who had Sakura Fubuki. Yes, it was Katana Mastery.
Yeah. Super, super fun.
But and that was the thing. I think a lot of early year 1, year 2, and probably the original part of year 3, the game was still pretty lateral, right? It proceeded very laterally, so it's not necessarily that it was all about huge jumps in power, because, you know, insert save for Hyo meme here, but the game was all about, sure, if you had Excalibur, well, here's a 5 attack fewer greatsword, but it's non-elemental. or here is the exact same weapon, a completely different skin, but a different weapon type. You know what I mean? So you could just shift very laterally. You were never so forced as to these are the meta units. Because, like, when fixed dice with True Double Hand was big, right? We were pretty much divided up into camps as far as how you chose to go about it, right? You had your players who were really, really big, pulled super, super hard for 2B back in the day. You had your people like me, who my original main damage dealer was fixed dice True Double Hand Tidus. I still remember the day that he broke 1,000 attack with fixed dice and True Double Hand, and I was stoked. And he was just doing ridiculous damage once you figured out how to chain quick hit. And then you had your Explorer Eileens with fixed dice who were going to just use finishers. And I mean, but either way, you're using fixed dice with similar builds on completely different units. So you could move laterally with your team building to make a cohesive group. As opposed to now, role compression is so prevalent in the state of the game that Sylvie does everything you ever need her to do. Better yet, if you have Sylvie and Chow and any tag chainer like 5-star Biggs and Wedge, you just cleared all of the content that we used to bang our heads up against for months maybe, until you pulled that one unit who had that one thing.
And not to mention that one unit that had that one thing was on a banner with a 1% rainbow rate. And that rainbow was only going to be like a 0.002% chance to be the one you wanted. So, yeah.
Look, the horror stories that I can tell about Lotus Mage Fina's banner.
Oh, yeah.
To this day, I will cringe anytime I see a Kunshira. People who've known me for long enough know that whenever I see that unit, I never come closer to throwing my phone at a moving car.
Oh, but Kunshira's an NVA now, right? So useful.
So is Lotus Fina.
Yeah, it's true.
Whose Brave Shift is actually still really good, just niche and a little limited.
Yeah, for sure.
And not Sylvie or Chow.
So you mentioned story events or CG units before. They were our very first story events, was Pyroglacial Lastwell, and that's where we kind of got into the rotation. The rotation, yeah. January 2018 was the very first unit intro quest for Pyroglacial Lastwell. Yeah.
I was gonna say, because you said story events, I was gonna say, but what about Lunera? That's the greatest story event of all time.
Hold on, where's my notes here? You're right. Story events were the very first story event was 12 months into the game. The Gathering was the very first one. I'm sorry. I meant Pyroglacial Lastwell was the first intro. But yeah,
intro for sure.
Either way, the first story event, right? So the very first story event brought us what I would call like the rotation, because it was story event, and then a King Mog, and then like something random, and then story event again. And that's what kind of got us into this rotation of stuff that was like, every month we got 2 or 3, little blips of power that lasted for, I would say, a good 2 years. That rotation just kind of like went and went and went and went and went until 2019. Okay, so we got our very first really big trial event tied to Lunar New Year, our very first marathon events, right? So like our very first taste of like boss rush, like style raid events, and then your personal favorite,
right?
Telfusanus. So tell us about, did you care about CG units? Like, did you pull them because they were CG units, or did you just happy to get them?
So at the time, I had this preconceived notion that CG automatically meant amazing. Because if Gumi was going to invest all this money on a CG limit burst, they had to be incredible, right? Obviously now we know Pyroglacial Lastwell was largely a dud. Sakura was a great finisher once you got her stacked, but that took forever. Fina was good. Lid was great for the time and died immediately. Jake was tragically awful.
The best one,
Fina and Nicole.
I think Nicole was the best one. Yeah, and Fina, Yeah, for sure. And I actually got really lucky with Nicole. I was like,
Same.
I'm gonna throw my 30% rainbow ticket, and I got
Oh
him on the
man.
first try. I was like, oh, I'm done pulling on the first day
I
because you only
remember
needed
getting.
one copy.
Oh yeah. I remember getting pretty lucky with Reagan,
Okay.
but that was around the time. I think Reagan might have been our first step up.
I think you're right.
That sounds right in my head. And I remember getting really lucky on that step up, and I was like, yes, this is the future, this is now. But as far as the CG units went, like I thought that CG meant good, and so I pulled for them for that reason, because they were CG, and in my mind that meant that these were incredible, with obvious exceptions being the Leela Sephiroth banner, where obviously we know that Leela was the superior unit at the time, despite the weird movement that ruined her chaining, whatever. At that
Neovision's
time,
Leela
though,
win.
God, if only. Careful what we ask for, though. I mean,
Yeah.
I suppose people would probably rather see the Lunar New Year monk twins.
Yeah, that's probably true. And I know would be a big fan of Neovision Zenata, right?
Oh God, yes, and Ong too. But
Yeah.
these are easy conversations that we could have for other times. At that time, when we were in that event rotation, I have always loved story events, because the one thing that FFBE has always really done, somewhat excluding season 3, was it has built an incredible universe with really captivating smaller stories. Like the Lunera and Bran stories and Ruggles is absolutely incredible. I remember it vividly to this day. Soul's origin story is still fantastic, and I remember it vividly to this day. Crimson's story, I thought it was a little ill-timed as far as when they released the event, but still an incredible story. And when they were giving us these story events, I could overlook how lazy I felt King Mog and raid events were. And elemental battles too. I thought those were always awful. The first one was okay. The rest of them were just raid with energy instead of orbs, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But the story events themselves were absolutely incredible, because we got lore on these units that we really cared about. And 2019 bringing an absolute tanking of story events right around the time they released that Esther and Sylvie banner really put a terrible taste in my mouth, because here you have Sylvie, right? Esther was our first precursor, I believe. And we got no lore.
Yeah, I remember everyone saying,
none.
what's a precursor? Especially when we got more than one of them.
Yes.
And it was like, why do I care about these units? Why do they have this label?
Really strong.
Well, for that reason, obviously, yeah. But like, what does that mean to this universe?
We still don't know. Right? I mean, in no point have we ever had Esther and Kaito and Carton in the same place, and Sky now. They've never been in the same place, so we have no idea what the precursors are. I suspect, hopefully, now that we have the FF units mingling with a precursor, now I'm hoping we get some crossover at some point.
Yeah.
But the story events were opportunities to world build in a mobile game where you're trying to entice people to pull for units that they like. And that was the best thing that they ever did. And then they started to release these absolute game-defining units, as I've mentioned before, that the Sylvie and Esther banner changed global and made it a different game from JP. Then Xeno came after, then Elena came after.
Oh my gosh.
Xuan Wu, excuse me, I'm not even gonna attempt, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The spirit scaling monks, like those units changed Global's version, and we got no information about any of them.
Yeah. Big. I would call that a huge ball dropped.
Massive. Truly.
One thing I did that I really loved about story events, and that I really miss. One is obviously Lapis, right? But also just like the stuff you could get from them. So you know, they every story event came with one of those like 30% Neovisions tickets, or not Neovisions, so 30% Rainbow tickets. So you had like a reasonable chance to get a a rainbow at the end of completing the event if you did the extremely, at the time, difficult EX stage at the very end of it. That almost always ended with defeat this enemy with an Esper. And it was obnoxious. And you would nothing was as bad as having to go and do it a second time because you screwed up your chaining or something like that. And and I feel like over time, now story events are every stage is no items, no continues, no KOs. And
maybe bring the unit.
And while I like that for when I'm like watching TV while I'm playing, I kind of miss having to actually play the story event. And it would be like, instead it would be like, oh, defeat this enemy with this unit using this skill. And it was like, I'm actually acting out the story, which was, I think, a lot of fun, even though sometimes it was annoying to be like, hit the enemy 6 times with water and ice. That was annoying. But like some of the fun stuff that was like, use this skill during this stage of the fight was kind of cool. And I miss that level of complexity, to be honest with you.
I suppose I misspoke earlier. It just occurred to me that we did get a bit of a story event for the original Elena, because we got the whole comic book battle scene with her and Morgana. So, excuse me, just in case the comment section goes wild about that. Yes, we used to get very worthwhile things from story events, and they just stopped.
Yeah.
In favor of trying new things. But then, for that brief shining moment,
yes,
we had Telful Sanis, and I think that just across the board, for a game like what FFBE really is, that is one of, if not the best thing that they have ever done.
So,
because they gave us 3 different ways of approaching the exact same event that were completely different.
I was on vacation when this happened. When Telful Sanis started, I was on vacation, and I remember being in my my in-laws' living room and like trying to figure out, how am I supposed to get these fixed units to work together? Like I'm supposed to get a 64 hit chain. Like, what is this, and how am I supposed to pull this off? And so like I remember having to like struggle at it, and then like I was like, I'm not surviving, and I don't understand, and I can't make the team the way I want it to be, and it was just like, oh my gosh. But then when I finally like did it, it was like, oh yes, this is it. And you got a guaranteed rainbow at the end of it, and it was like, oh my gosh, there was so many cool things about it. You remember this event in so much more detail than I do because I was on vacation. So I'm gonna let you take over and just like do it. Like, you do the thing.
So basically, there were, for anybody who wasn't around for the event, I'm sorry, because you really missed, as far as I'm concerned, the best thing that they've ever done. There were 3 separate fights, as far as I can recall. There might have even been 4. You had 2 versions of the fight where they gave you fixed parties. So I actually pulled it up so that I wouldn't misremember, because I'm very good at that. So the first fight, you were given CG Darkfina, so White Lily Darkfina, Sacred Shield Charlotte, Adventurer Locke, Magitech Warrior Terra, and Myra, which is actually a really fantastic team, if not a bit damage loaded. But then you had to go and beat these trials, and if you didn't pull for these units, you had no idea what they did. You were given another fixed team of Chair Rain, so Aldor King Rain, Lucas, the Christmas magic cover tank, Warrior of Light Lena, Summer Litten Fina, and Mastermind Zon. And those units seem like they make even less sense unless you know what Mastermind Zon really does, and the fact that you use his LB and you use him as more than just a fence for buffs and debuffs and whatnot. But you had to use these units that you might not even have to complete these fights that required actual thought and strategy, and it forced you to learn how to use your units other than watch YouTube video repeat strategy. Now, obviously, some people still did post videos for clears, and I personally remember banging my head up against the Magitech Terra video with White Lily Darkfina, because for the life of me, I could not figure out the 64 hit chain. So I do remember watching the Clake video back in the day. Shout out if you're watching, bud.
That was it. That was the one that got me through it, because I could not figure out how to do this fast enough to get CWA to chain. I just couldn't do it.
I had the benefit of having been a quick hit manual chain main. I remember having horrible, excruciating anxiety trying to teach myself to manually chain with 2 thumbs for quick hit. But so Chaos Wave Awakening was never a problem. But 4 times 8 times 2 still doesn't get you where you need to be completely, because that's 63.
Yep.
And
You had to chain in
chain weave
one
appropriately.
hit.
And it's awful. It's absolutely awful. So I did end up using a video for that trial, but then you got to take on these exact same fights with your own party. And you had some knowledge of the mechanics, and now in the back of your mind you're thinking, well, if I could make it work with these units under these circumstances, I have better units to me that I can gear better than what they gave me, so now I can figure out how to build them. And what it did is it created excitement for units that I didn't have, that I could pull off banner if I didn't have them. It made me excited to actually get in the game and try out different strategies to do these things. And they have never given us anything like that since, outside of Chamber of Vengeance, which in and of itself has become a meme in global. Cool that they're bringing it back. I'm gonna maintain my excitement until they show me that I should have it.
Yeah.
But even that was still bring 1 unit that can solo it and 4 or 5 other units.
Yep.
And rack up your totals.
Which, let's be real, it's gonna be bring Esther or Wylk and then rotate around them. That's what it's going to be. Now, I will say, though, like, the second phase of it, the one you're talking about, so instead of being the fixed party trial, becoming the free party trial the next week, I went back the other day just to see it, because I don't remember it. Either I beat it and forgot about it because it was traumatic, or I didn't do it. I cannot remember for the life of me. But I watched Sinzar's clear of it, and, like, my mind was blown at the level of, like, the level of stuff that went into just getting whatever team you wanted to work.
Yeah, it was hard.
That was, I'm thinking I probably just didn't beat it. I'm thinking I probably just tried it and gave up and said, whatever, I don't care, the rewards aren't worth it or whatever. But, like, it looked insane, even compared to today's standards, because I know what those units are capable of. I know what their modifiers are now. I know, like, how hard that boss had to have been in order to soak up the damage that it soaked up.
I mean, and we were
superb
around the
event
time where we were still dealing with elemental Tetris to an extent, so that's where a lot of our heads were as far as trials went. But that fight was hard, and you had to learn the fight and your units, and you had to put it together. And even if you had it together, you still had to do it.
Yeah.
And the best part about all of it was the sense of the community that it brought about, because we got rewards for the number of clears in these fights. And realistically, the second that clear videos started to come up on YouTube, then everyone just strategy, and in a way that kind of has brought us to where we are now too. Because now it's well, this person did it, I'm going to copy that almost exactly as I can. I never need to learn how to use my units. I require no individual thought. I'll beat this in a day because someone else put in the work to do it. And it's great for the community, but it's not great for the game. And Tel Fulsanis was great for the game, and we've never seen anything like it since.
Yeah, for sure. So Tel Fulsanis, that it started in, it was unique in that it started in December of 2019. And the free party trial was in 2020, so it was January 2020. The next big change in terms of, like, what types of content we get was Dark Visions.
Sure was.
It was Dark Visions in April, so just a short 3 months later, and we get a completely different game mode. I can remember vividly the first month of it just being like, hey, I actually beat this boss. I'm kind of cool. And then realizing that it was scored and, like, I actually had to work at trying to put stuff together, and I didn't care. Yeah. I honestly, like, didn't really care. The thought of having to put together 12 different teams or 8 different teams or however many elements we have just to do stuff, like, it didn't feel rewarding to me.
Yeah. I'm competitive by nature. I always have been. But I absolutely hate ranked content, because it, especially when variance gets involved, but talk about that forever. Ranked content to me is the purest form of pay to win. Because let's just be blunt and let's be honest about it. Wylk's vision card and Knights of Grandshield's vision card and Dark Reign's vision card, unless you truly get lucky on banner or have incredible off banner luck with free pulls, which does happen and there are those people, you will struggle to keep up with the people who just funnel lines of income into this game. And ranked content is what brings you there. Now, I mean, to this day, and I remember this conversation from the unofficial live stream around Anniversary, I couldn't tell you how much dark matter I have now, because we haven't had to make those dark visions weapons in forever. But they still give us the content like we care about it.
Right.
And Vision World is great because we can share rank 1 and then we all get 10,000 lapis and everyone's happy. And plus, there's actually pretty good stuff to grind. And so if they made a transition to Vision World, I could tolerate it infinitely more. You saw the community's outrage when, for that one, I guess we'll say quarter, they switched Clash of Wills to a shared rank 1. Or to an unshared rank 1.
Yes. I was in the outraged camp, because that was for sure like a step back. It was a step back in terms of Clash of Wills. So
it was, and that was one of the best things about Clash of Wills. I mean, clearly Clash of Wills is where Global is going to start really focusing. Morale components are very interesting. The fact that they're building it into Chamber of Vengeance now, where the Clash of Wills units will be relevant in content outside of Clash of Wills, is fantastic.
Did you even use any morale skills when you were fighting Wylk? Or did you just blow Wylk up?
You know, I think I just blew him up.
I just blew him up too. You didn't have that much health, so it didn't really matter.
No,
but you could technically use morale skills on him.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, now that they're making morale scaling part of the scoring, that whatever. I was concerned when Clash of Wills first came out that this created a weird mental schism in the FFBE community, because now you can build a whole new set of units to release specifically for Clash of Wills that may or may not be useful in Dark Visions somehow. At the time, I didn't know much about the morale anything because it was brand new.
Yeah.
And I was worried that it would create, like, all right, you either pull for Dark Visions units or you pull for Clash of Wills units. They will not overlap. And largely, unfortunately, that's been correct.
I think that's largely true, and I'm going to put a pin in that topic because we are like 6 months from there. But just hold on. I want you to remember that you just said that, because I certainly have a comment about that. So Dark Visions, you said like you're kind of competitive, but like you didn't go too crazy with it, right?
Not really. I mean, when we could rank 1, I would.
Sure. There you go. So when there was a targetable, cappable goal, you would do it. I didn't even realize there was, and so like for me it was just like, oh well, I can't score better than other people because like I don't pull like other people, so I'm just not gonna bother. And like as a result, it took me like a way longer than it needed to for me to make my first Dark Ragnarok and Dark Gambentine and stuff like that. Then I started actually realizing what it was and what I could do if I started caring a little bit. Right. But that took months. You know, it took from I don't think I really got into it until like the end of the year, or the end of 2020, and by then some other interesting stuff had happened in our world.
Right.
You know,
right.
Where
we'll come back to
where I had time to sit in my house and
and
actually play the game. So
yeah.
In April though, we got our first Dark Visions. In August, we got our first official boss rush, as well as our first challenge of the Brave. So like farming materials for Neovisions units, which if we're farming materials for Neovisions units, that means we also have Neovisions units now. Our very first ones came out during that time span because of the 2020 anniversary.
Yes, I believe it was that August, I think is when Cloud came out.
Yep. And then nothing happened in the game
Nothing
until April.
happened.
Like, oh, things happen, but the rotation, right? So we stayed in that rotation from April to April.
Mm-hmm.
When we got,
unfortunately, includes an anniversary.
Yes, which is kind of sad. That anniversary was an interesting one.
You know, I'll give credit where it's due, right? And you and I have talked about this a little bit. The game could have easily died during the pandemic, and Gumi figured out how to do just enough to keep excitement for the game on, as I understand it, to be a razor-thin staff because they couldn't leave anywhere to go into any port of business to do real meaningful work. Again, this is as I understand it. Take it with a grain of salt. They did enough.
I can only imagine, too, like a razor-thin budget, even with people pulling for the units that they've been now encouraged and rewarded to pull for. Yeah.
So I do give them credit where it's due, but it just, the game was on pause for largely all of 2020 and half of 21. The game just was on pause because they did what they could and they couldn't do anything else.
Which isn't to say we didn't get anything.
To see dividends. We didn't get nothing for sure. You're certainly right about that.
Neovision's units, Neovision's Awakening units, some, not very many, but some of them, you know, the cycle of events rolled on, right? We knew what we were expecting because of what JP got.
But therein lies part of the problem, as I saw it at the time, because they absolutely dropkick and steamrolled us into Neovisions much quicker. We had some units like Zenaida, who we just mentioned, never got her time to be amazing like she was in JP. Ash never got her time. Ace and Rem, when they came out, were incredible in JP for a long time, and they were absolutely irrelevant for us.
Yeah.
Because we just drop-kicked our way into Cloud, Rain, Sol, Terra, and none of it mattered anymore at that point.
Yep.
And I know that was probably a great decision, maybe in retrospect.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't miss out on anything too prevalent. We missed out on some events, sure. We missed out on Lapis, which they claim they've given back through logins, okay? But at the time, from a player-based perspective, and again, as someone who was moderating the Facebook page, that seemed very much like a cash-driven goal.
Yeah.
Get to Neovisions because those will make us money again.
Well, and so as I was not moderating at the time, I was just in the group, and I remember there was so much discussion around, do I need this unit or do I need this unit? Like, do I want to save for this person or do I want to save for this person? I remember for such a long time, it was, you got to save for Noctis. You got to save for Noctis. And then it was, you got to save for Zidane. You have to save for Zidane. And then it was, this is where I put the pin in it earlier. You have to save for Sephiroth.
Yes.
And that's where I was like, this is going to be my moment. I don't pull, I don't buy. I'm going to save up as a free player, and I'm going to pull for Sephiroth, and I'm going to break the mold, and I'm going to get that Sephiroth cuz I have all the units that Sinzar says I need, all the gear that Sinzar says I need to make Sephiroth really maxed out on day 1. I've got all the gear. I just don't have Sephiroth. So if I save up my 100,000, I'll be able to get that Sephiroth. And then your point comes, right? Clash of Wills comes July 2021. We get our anniversary. They tell us Clash of Wills is coming, and then the split comes that I didn't even realize at the time was going to be the schism that you're talking about. Do I pull for Clash of Wills or do I pull for Dark Visions? But at that moment, it was like, I'm kind of interested in this game mode. I don't have enough Lapis to spare if I'm saving for Sephiroth.
Yeah.
I really wanted Louise.
Yes.
I got a Ling, you know, and then
I mean, hey, that's
it's good. It's good. It was great at the time, but then it was like, but that just ate about 20K that I was saving for Sephiroth. You know, and you know, a couple months later, Sephiroth came, and I only got my pity copy. And it was just like, oh, all that work for nothing, and I didn't even get Louise like I wanted, and it was just, oh. But I will say, for me, Clash of Wills turned the game around. It has quickly become my favorite piece of content to play, even when it sucks.
Yes, agreed, because they actually keep up with it.
Yeah.
You know, I still wish we got story chapters more often, because I think season 4 is pretty great. But Clash of Wills as a whole, it's a great idea. It's original thought. They make interesting fights with interesting mechanics, even if they're a little irritating.
And now more customizable than ever. You know, you could say, do I want the hard AI or do I want the easy AI and not care?
I wonder if they'll continue that.
I'm really curious about that. Like, I want to know, like, what... I think it's so neat. And the way it was advertised, I remember very distinctly watching it and hearing them talk about it during the live stream. And it was like, you're going to take the best units you've got, and you're going to put these modifiers on to make it as hard as you can push, and push for the hardest score you can. And I was like, that is so cool. They're giving us the opportunity to be creative and flexible and like use these units that we've been collecting for all these years. Little did I know it was going to very quickly become, you need to have this unit every month. But still, it's like, I don't know. There's been some times where I've pulled some really random units out of my inventory to like cram them into a full EX16 team just to make it work. Just to go for as hard of a bonus score as I can, knowing that I couldn't cap for several months because I didn't have the units. But like just seeing how I could do, which is what they intended. It's still fun. It's still fun to see how far I can go.
Definitely. I mean, we'll take a step back real quick because I want to come back to Sephiroth. For perspective, I went for EX3 Sephiroth and Tifa.
Okay.
I was actually at the time planning on that being the very last banner I ever pulled, and had planned to completely step away from the game at that point entirely. Clearly, as we see me sitting here right now, that didn't happen.
Did not happen.
Clash of Wills kept me around, but
yeah.
I believe to get to EX3 Sephiroth and Tifa, I do believe I went to second pity for both. And I think I spent roughly in the ballpark of 250,000 lapis total to do it.
Oh, be still my heart.
And at the time, I was like, you know what? It's fine. I don't care. I'm walking away. I want to do this. I'm going to stick around for a little bit to enjoy these units because I'm really excited about them. I actually had a lot of fun with the 7 remake, which I know is a bit of a split decision on that. I thought it was great. And then Clash of Wills comes. And here comes you bringing brand new life into a unit like Ling, who was this white rabbit for me watching Howl videos a long time ago with evasion provokers that I could never get because I never had Illusionist Nicole and I never had Ling. And here comes Ling, super easy to build for passive provoke and evasion. And here's Louise with this new CG, Crystal everything. She's just Elena, but better and different with worse voice acting. Here's this incredible unit, damage and limit burst fill, and every species killer. And the game mode was phenomenal at the time. It was very easy for the first quarter, I would say. Like, it didn't require a lot of thought. It was, here's these multipliers, it does more damage now, make yourself a little more bulky. But the thing that makes it better than Dark Visions can ever aspire to be, for me, is that you're allowed to bring a tank that does its job.
You don't have to just take no damage.
You can't take damage.
Yeah.
And now you can take 2,000. Great. It's wonderful. Like, Clash of Wills makes you need a tank, and they give you a piece of equipment that is entirely designed around making your tank better. The Dancer's Diadem is arguably the best piece of equipment in the game right now.
It's invaluable. I've actually got a couple of people in my Discord who like lament every event that they don't have the Dancer's Diadem because they didn't push that hard in the beginning stages of Clash of Wills to get all the Celestite that they need to make the stuff when it comes out. And like, I feel that. Like, that's a powerful item you're missing, you know? And that's a big deal.
I wonder, with them updating, at least we know the helm and the clothes soon, I wonder where they can take it outside of stats. Because, I mean, unless you make those setups that have killers on them, like 75 to 100%, I still see no reason to ever have anything other than chain cap increase or flat stats.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
I'll be really interested to see what they do about that for sure. But clearly, Clash of Wills is where they're putting their attention now, and they figured out that competitively ranked content makes people spend on units. They figured out that giving you a reason to use those units makes people want to spend on those units, and then letting those units be useful in future iterations of this content makes people spend on units. And I mean, don't get me wrong, we've still had flop Clash of Wills units. Like, Rivera is good, kind of. He's a little better now with the Sorceress, or the Demoness vision card, but still, he's middling. Igni is still okay. Maeve had her one. And I love the unit, but she had her one.
Tiana, unfortunately.
Tiana, yeah. Fry is okay. She wasn't even really essential for the one she came out for.
Everyone just used Louise.
Right. Yeah. And then on the other end of the coin is now here we have this freshly upgraded Esther that's 3 months old, now has Clash of Wills scaling, or Morale scaling, and Wylk, and Sylvie, and Skye, who's a year old, and is still incredible in that content. So they've really done something right here.
Skye was...
I genuinely hope that they keep it that way.
Skye was the moment. Skye was the moment
True.
for me that was like, this game mode is exciting for me. I have this unit that can perfect score this event by herself. And I had her, and I had her at EX+2, so I rank 1'd that her event, and I was like, this is so cool. Like, that I can play with the big boys, a little bit. And I remember just being so excited that first time I saw that one there, that I had done it, and like that, from that moment I was hooked. I wasn't gonna pull on every Clash of Wills unit because I didn't have the Lapis in the reserves. I didn't pull Carton for that reason, I had just blown the Lapis load on Sephiroth, so I didn't have the resources for Carton.
Of course.
But like, I've pulled on most of them, and now I like work really hard to like kind of keep track of what do I want, and to the point where I've skipped units like Knights of Grandshelt. I skipped Tyvis. I skipped Esther when she came out, even though she was for that Clash of Wills. I skipped her because she wasn't really for Clash of Wills. Now she is. Now I've got her and I'm using her. Darn it. But it's been such I feel like Clash of Wills has been just like prolific for the game. So
100%.
We took a quick poll yesterday in the Facebook group, and I put this out there. I said, which of these events has been your favorite event over time? And I think the results are not surprising. We got 124 responses on this. Of those, 54% said Clash of Wills. The next highest category down was surprisingly Dark Visions, but just barely tied 1 percentage point down below. That was 14%, by the way. Just 1% point down was story events.
Of course.
So story, just like you're talking about, has just a huge following. And people who like to read comics, who like to know the lore of the game they're playing, they like those story events. Not to mention all the other stuff like Lapis and tickets and rewards, and those are fun. But people like to know why we're playing this game.
Yes.
I personally think. Do you remember when they first started Dark Visions and there was like little cutscenes, like Rain and Laswell and Fina standing in the far plane talking to Dark Bahamut, being like, "We're gonna kick your butt, dude," and like I think they need that for Clash of Wills.
Oh man!
Can you imagine, like, Vortex rips open and out pops the Exterminator Extreme, and he's just like, "Here's my event, here's my story, here's why I'm here," and then we get to fight him.
I remember when they were gonna do that with the elemental battles, moving into those being the Chamber of Vengeance units or enemies that we fought. That would be really cool.
And I feel like scripting that could be hard, but you also have to get someone to write the dialogue and whatnot. But like, imagine the flavor that then comes with it.
Sure.
We know why these jerks are here and why we're beating them up.
I think potentially the best way to go about that, since they've made it seem like they're going to take the Clash of Wills iterations and bring them into Chamber of Vengeance with a morale bar. I think that's the opportunity to do that. So
For sure.
I think once you hit level 99, that's when you get your lore dump.
Ooh,
Quick
yeah.
Conversations, and then you carry that level 99 lore dump into the Chamber of Vengeance iteration of them, and then we get to work through that. So maybe you get the what they've done with some of these more recent events, where you get a beginning, beat it the first time, and then you get the end.
You know, and I would even say that there is a dangerous precedent TM for that, right? Because with a lot of events that we get now, you do the first couple stages, and then there's a story chapter. And then you do a couple more stages, like with Ibarra's first event. You got a couple stories, and then you got a couple levels, and then you got the story, and then you knew more about why Ibarra was helping this family, and like that would be so cool. Once you hit level 99, now you unlock the lore. That would be fantastic, and that would be a good reason for people to like push for it.
Especially if they can figure out how to tie in the Clash of Wills unit to the story of this character.
Why is Roberta fighting Aldaba?
Well, yeah. Why is Roberta not fighting just a Clash of Wills version of Xyrus? That's the real question.
That is a fantastic question.
Newer players will have no idea why that question matters.
Yes. So true. Cool.
But I think that could be a great idea for them. I mean, it's just give us opportunities for more lore. I don't see it necessarily costing them any more time, money, or resources to just storyboard. It can be somewhat obscure. Give me the names of places we'll never go. Give me the names of characters we'll never see. I don't care. Just give me a reason to care.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I think the opportunity there has to do as well with the precursors. A lot of Clash of Wills units have ties to being precursors. We could finally make sense of that with something like this.
And if they wanted to do us a solid, they could throw in the information about the precursors' friends. Like,
yes.
They almost never came out on banners by themselves. I think Sky was the only exception. Because otherwise it was Carton and Godria. Nobody knows anything about Ghostbusters chick, but let's talk about her. That could be fun.
Let's talk about her.
We only just learned who Marion is in this last event. And she's all over everything. All of her skills had Marion in the name. So, oh, Sylvie.
Oh, Sylvie. Oh, Sylvie. Fantastic.
But
so
more story, more lore. Make me care.
Make me care. I like it. I think we've talked about it. Here we are. So
I think you're right. How
did we get here? It's been a 6-year journey for some of us.
It has.
Pulling and throwing tickets and grinding out silly rewards to, overcoming great challenges that are just like pushing the limits every month. I feel like this last Clash of Wills, I had an idea for a team, and then I beat it live on stream, not necessarily following a guide, but just kind of like working through it step by step, turn by turn with my chat, and like I felt more victorious beating the most recent Clash and getting rank 1 than I did when I beat the first one with Sky, and then I did the first time I beat Ashura, in the Vortex. Like that was my moment, and it felt so good to get there, and I hope players can feel the same way. I think events like Clash of Wills help us do that, especially if there's shareable rank 1, because it gives you a parameter to shoot for. Gives you a target rather than just being, well, do I happen to have 12 of this STMR so everybody can wear it and max out their damage?
I probably do, but that's neither here nor there.
You do. You're that guy.
I am. It's true. I agree, though. This most recent Clash of Wills did a lot for seemingly no reason, I think. And maybe it was just because Sylvie was involved, but even to the point where, and this is a bit poetic for me, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this, but Clake and I were talking a lot during this Clash of Wills because he's coming back into the game. He was my white rabbit for years. I would be on his streams, I'd be talking to him, I'd be watched all of his videos, and then he went away. And since then, I think when he stopped playing, I was probably 15 ranks under him. Now I think I'm roughly 20 ranks, maybe 20 or 30 ranks over him. I don't know. It doesn't matter. And he's asking me for help on the stuff that he's trying to do to clear Clash of Wills. Like, I talked him through a couple different strategies that he can use because he had Skye, so why not use Skye? He had Kresnik who could help him fill her LB so that she could just spam it turn after turn. Like, I mean, we talked for a long time, and now being able to help someone coming back into the game who, honestly, I can largely credit for why I care as much as I did from years 2 to 4 meant a lot to me personally, because I can finally feel like I'm giving back to someone who, love him or not, helped build the community of the way that it is.
For sure. I remember patiently waiting for his videos every week. So
yes, all of them. His full videos, his unit reviews, and then his trial videos when we had those. They were great. All of it was great. And this Clash of Wills was very refreshing, even though it was honestly just another Clash of Wills.
Well, and I gotta say, like, that is the other piece of what I love about Clash of Wills, is helping each other, because it's shared rank 1. Like, you know, when you see it in the Discord, like, somebody's like, I can't use this unit, but I can use this unit. How can I make this work? And people, like, care enough to say, if you use this skill in this order, or you need to gear this way, or, you know, try replacing this with that, or just change your rotation of whatever. People work together to play Clash of Wills. I've got people that I know in a couple different communities who, like, you know, not because I'm this, like, strategic genius at the game, but because I put stuff out there, who, like, want to know, like, what should I do? How can I get better? How can I beat level 85 this month, instead of just sticking at 64? You know, right. and because it's not ranked, people who can do well care enough to help people without sacrificing their score, without sacrificing the lapis that they're going to get at the end. You know, right. And that's what I think is just super cool about it. So
definitely. I mean, as far as Clash of Wills go, I mean, I'm one of those players who has multiple copies of a lot of things. I will let people interpret that how they will. So I'm not necessarily the best at giving advice as far as Clash of Wills goes, but I know a lot about a lot of things. And then there's people like you who produce all this content for people that makes everything so approachable between you and... God, there's just a lot of people who make a lot of content. I just don't recommend everyone follow, like, Wanderer strategies, because that's for people like me.
Wanderers is genius, but it's a very specific flavor of what you are pulling for and what you're using. Same thing I would say, you know, and he said this was why he wasn't going to do Clash of Wills videos anymore, Live Dilly, because people would say, well, how can I, you know, what can I do if I don't have 3 copies of Knights of Granshelt's card? And it's just like, well, I'm sorry that I pulled, you know? So yeah,
abundance is a theme for those guys.
It's a different style and a different flavor. But the good news is, I mean, if I can get to rank 1 as a basically free to play player, you can too.
Right. And that's what I meant when, and we're going to come a little full circle here, but when I talked about the horizontal component of what FFBE used to be, right? Clash of Wills is probably the truest homage to the first 2 years of the game, because you can truly build horizontally. And if for no other reason than they're letting units who came out a long time ago still be relevant. That in and of itself makes pulling for those units really beneficial, and God bless if Skye gets one of those innate abilities.
Ooh. Yeah.
Oh dear.
It better be 4,000 flat HP or I'm walking.
4,000 flat HP and probably a 600 times modifier on her jump.
Oh, seriously.
Because her base form is useless at the moment, but that's neither here nor there.
But seriously though, like, imagine being a new player, right? And you're like, I'm rank 51. I think I'm gonna try out Clash of Wills, and I got a Skye yesterday. like
Oof.
you're set.
Well,
You-
as long as she's EX1, yeah, for
You,
sure.
you're gonna be able to do some work there, you know.
For sure.
And it's gonna be pretty cool. So talk about you're right. Coming full circle. We didn't even plan that. That wasn't even on our
we
outline.
didn't. It was pretty good.
That was it's like we're professionals or something. So
Man.
good stuff. Well, we've been talking for an hour and 15 minutes, if you can believe that.
Oh,
So
jeez.
I think we're
Thank
gonna.
you for people who stuck around.
Yeah, I really hope that this is fun. And if you like discussions like this, I would like to try and do them, you know, with people who care enough to have these discussions with me more regularly. This is, like I said, the 4th one I've ever done that was a really long video like this. And special shout out and thank you again to Flip Method for suggesting it, and for you, Darren, for hanging out with me for an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, man, absolutely. This was fun. Thank you, Flip. This was a good idea.
Super fun, and definitely go check out Flip if you haven't yet, because he's a rad dude. He's a rad dude. But if you
he just pulled for Leftia.
Leftia, of all units that you'd pull for, Leftia, and there's a good reason for it too.
Her STMR's fun.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want a 50,000 HP Medius, I'm all for it.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't? But that said, thank you to all you guys too for hanging out and visiting, and, you know, stick around for next time, and we'll see you whenever that is. Take care.